Some people pay up to 10K or even 25 grand to get someone to tell them where to buy a house. I just want to give you that information for free. Now, imagine this. You're 38, you're about to buy your first home, maybe your first investment property, and you decide to buy in Wellington. Fast forward 2 years and you realize you bought in the wrong city. Property prices haven't moved. Meanwhile, your mate James, he bought in Whangarei, and his house has already gone up in price by 90 grand. Now think about this. You both put in the same effort. You both bought a house at the same time, roughly spent about the same amount of money, but you got very, very different results. And if this was you, you'd be thinking, the only way I can get out of this property is to go to a real estate agent and pay their whopping great commission. Now, you might think James was just lucky buying in Whangarei, but it probably wasn't just luck, it's that he picked the right location, and you can strategically do this. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ed, an economist and property investor here at Opus Partners, and I'm very lucky. Some of New Zealand's biggest news media asked me where the best places to buy a house are, so let's spill the tea and rank the best and the worst places to buy a house in New Zealand so you don't make the same mistake. First up are the red areas, the ones to avoid, and last on my list is Thames. Property prices are really expensive in the Thames Coromandel district, and they are really high compared to incomes there. To me, they look pretty overvalued, and the rental income is low if you're buying them as an investment. Now, don't get me wrong. This is a beautiful part of the country, and you're welcome to drop me a comment and say, yeah, but Thames is amazing. Have you seen those beaches? Fair enough, it is a stunner. But I'm a hard-nosed property investor, so I care less about whether it's a beautiful place or not, and I think about where the numbers work and how I think house prices will go. This is just my take on looking at the numbers, not the beaches. Now, moving into the areas that aren't the worst of the worst, but I'd still tend to stay away from, next up is Wanganui. It's a nice little city, however, incomes aren't that high, and I really care about that since you need businesses and workers to do well and earn good incomes if they're going to pay good rents and eventually bid house prices up. And although house prices there are relatively cheap, they're quite a bit higher than I think they should be because they've had this double house price boom. So if I take you back to 2014, the Reserve Bank changed the rules and made it so you needed a bigger deposit to buy an investment property in Auckland. So what all of the investors who were buying up properties in Auckland, they were like, bugger this, we're going to go buy up in the regions instead. That pushed house prices up. Then we had the COVID house price boom, and that pushed house prices up even further again. So to put that into context for Wanganui, house prices went from under 200K in 2016 to over 600K just 5 years later before they dropped back a bit. So they went up really, really fast, and I don't think that property prices are going to boom in Wanganui for a good long time. They'll probably be flat again for another decade. Gisborne is basically the same story. They had that long flat period, then it got the double house price boom. But it's also an area that is just way out in the wop-wops. It's a 3-hour drive to the closest city. Now, I've got a friend who's investing in Gisborne. She buys up really cheap properties and she can still rent them out with a decent yield. And that really works for her. And if that's your investment style too, well, Gisborne could actually be a flashing green for you. But for me, Gisborne's still a place I'm staying away from right now. Moving into the yellow areas that, well, are okay, but they don't impress me. And remember, that's based on current data. At 10th on the list is South Taranaki, which is where I grew up. If you haven't heard of Hauora, here's the highlight reel. You've got the largest dairy factory in the Southern Hemisphere, and of course you've got the beautiful Hauora Water Tower. Now, after you've spent 5 minutes climbing that, you might wander down the street to the Hauora Repertory Society. Once upon a time, you would have actually seen a certain soon-to-be economist up on stage. But again, house prices are low there for a reason. When it comes to buying a house as an investment, for me, it only just squeaks into the top 10. Though before we get into the rest of the top 10, if you want to see more of these videos that kind of rank different areas to invest and buy a house in New Zealand, do me a quick favor and hit the like button. That's how I know which videos I should make more of, and honestly, it does help with the YouTube algorithm too. Subscribing, that helps. We're just over halfway on our mission to grow the channel to 50,000 subscribers. At 9th place is Lower Hutt, and these guys have had such a rough time. Property prices went down 30% at their worst from the peak of the market to the trough of the market. So let's say your house was worth $1 million at the top of the market. At its worst, it could have fallen to just under $700,000, losing $300K. Now, if we were sitting here recording this video back in 2015, and let's pretend I was on YouTube at the time, Lower Hutt would have been top of my list because it was just so undervalued, and after that, house prices took off. Now, if I recorded this video in 2021, Lower Hutt, that would have been down in the don't touch with a barge pole category because prices were so overvalued, that's why they fell. Today, I'm putting it somewhere in the middle. House prices have fallen so much that it's starting to get on my radar, but not quite yet. Tauranga is another one that's pretty tough to rank. Yes, it's a beautiful place, but again, I care more about the benchmarks than the beaches, and the average house price is very high there. It's almost the same as Auckland, but house prices don't go up as fast in Tauranga as they do in our biggest city. So I kind of think you're paying a big city price, but investing or buying a house in a city that's much, much smaller, and the rental yields there are kind of meh. And I know some people really like Hamilton, and look, there are good parts of the Waikato to invest in. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure going on, from the inland port to the potential new medical school at the university, so I'm willing to be convinced about Hamilton. So if you're sitting there thinking, Ed, you're dead wrong to put Hamilton in the yellow category, or you're dead wrong about whatever city you live in, good, let's have a good discussion down in the comments. Right, let's get into the areas that I'm really keeping my eye on. And I'm actually still a fan of Invercargill. Even though it's overvalued in my numbers, it's one of the only areas where house prices are increasing quite a bit right now. And here at Opus Partners, we find new build properties for people like yourself to invest in. Now, I've just sent one of our team down there to Invercargill to scout out for deals just to see what's down there. Doesn't mean that I'm buying up a whole street down there right now, but I'm keen to start looking at deals. And part of the reason for that is because Invercargill properties, they're cheap, but they still get a really good rental income, really good rental yield. And you can basically buy 2 properties in Invercargill for the same price as a single property in Auckland. Wellington City, that's another tricky one. Sometimes I love it, other times I think, oh my God, what's going on down there with businesses closing down, massive increases in the local council rates, and pretty shoddy local infrastructure. But at the same time, it actually looks to be one of the most, if not the most, undervalued area in the country. And it didn't get the same double house price boom that other areas in the kind of central or lower North Island got over the last 10 years. So I'm really keeping my eye on it at the moment, especially for high yield properties, because there's a lot of demand for apartments in the central city. Queenstown is another one that I'm keen on, but it's a bit of a wild one. Yes, it's stunning, it gets a lot of international tourists, and a lot of people do really well out of Airbnb, but it's also the most expensive place to buy a house in the country. Now, it's got its mountain views, it's got its wineries, its restaurants, it's definitely the lifestyle capital of New Zealand. But let's talk investment, because you're not exactly raking in the rent unless it's a really well-chosen property, a really well-chosen house, really well-chosen investment. But it's also one of the areas that is leading the current house price recovery. And with the right property, you can get an okay yield. So that's why I'm putting it down as a kind of light green. It's definitely not right for first-time investors. You've got to go in with your eyes wide open and a pretty hefty deposit, but it can work. And now for the top 3. These are the areas that I really like as an investment. Now, this one might surprise you because it's not a big city, but it's growing fast, and it's Rolleston. Now, 25 years ago, this was a really small town. Like, it was pretty much a paddock. Today, it's a city of 40,000 people. It's booming, at least when it comes to population. And it attracts a lot of people who can't necessarily afford a big standalone 4-bedroom house in Christchurch or Auckland, but they still want that lifestyle, and my bet is it's going to keep attracting those people. At number 2, it's the city that's just been knocked off the top spot. It's Christchurch. So Christchurch used to be my top spot to invest, and I myself bought a couple of investment properties there. And those have done well for me, better than buying the average house in New Zealand, and I still like Christchurch, but I've moved it to the number 2 spot for now. It's still undervalued and house prices are low compared to many other parts of the country, even though Christchurch is our second largest city, and house prices are basically where they were at the peak of the market back in 2021. We haven't seen house prices fall nearly as much as a place like Lower Hutt. On top of that, Christchurch has been massively rebuilt after the earthquakes. So the houses are newer, they're better insulated, way more tenant friendly, plus there's still a lot of new infrastructure coming up where the ribbon has to be cut. But top of the list for me, You might disagree with this, but this is where I bought 3 of my most recent property purchases. It's Auckland. Now, Auckland gets a bad rap. People love to complain. It's too expensive. I'll never be able to afford anything there. The traffic is bad. But Auckland house prices have never been so undervalued. It's sitting around 10% below where we'd usually expect it to be based on those historical trends. It's got the largest job market, and most of our new migrants do end up in Auckland. That doesn't mean that all the data is good for our largest city. House prices have actually underperformed over the last 10 years compared to the rest of the country. But that is the reason why I think there's opportunity there now. And that's why I'm putting my money where my mouth is and have bought a couple of $1 million worth of property in the city over the last 3 to 4 years. But where did I get this list wrong? Which city do you think should have made the top 3? Let me know down in the comments and we can have a good discussion.